we've got Debra Nowak, who is a director and also naturalist from the 1000 Island Environmental Center. And they have an incredible event there. And you may have seen this, I already shared this on my Facebook page. They have 4 eaglets, which is really rare. So I would like to, first of all, welcome Debra Nowak, and then also we have eagle biologist David Hancock, whom you've of course seen several times with me. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I wanted to say to our audience, please feel free to put in your questions. So let's go a little bit into where Debra is actually located. I'm going to share the screen right now. So you should be able to see this. 1 second, and I'll put it on the big screen. There we go. So Debra, can you please give us a little bit of a background about your location, first of all?
Sure. So we are in the state of Wisconsin. So in the Great Lakes region, we are bordered by Lake Michigan to our east and then Lake Superior to our north. And Lake Michigan has that bay that kind of cuts into our state. It leads right up to the city of Green Bay. For people familiar with football, it's the Green Bay Packers. And we are located just slightly south of Green Bay, north of Milwaukee, north of Chicago, a nice little region that we refer to as the Fox Cities. Lots of small little communities located right along the Fox River.
Right, I've zoomed in now, and there are about 15,000 people, so it's a very small place, isn't it?
It is. So Kaukauna is just one city that makes up the Fox Cities area. The larger city in the area would be Appleton, but lots of just small, quaint communities, lots of nature centers, environmental areas, natural areas for hiking. So really a fabulous area to live.
It looks very beautiful. And I'm going to go to your homepage now. So this is the 1000 Island Environmental Center. Tell us a little bit about it and how many years you've been there and what activities you do.
Sure. So Thousand Islands is an urban conservation area. So we have 350 acres that is zoned as conservation area, no building, no infrastructure. So it's really preserved for wildlife to be, you know, a nice refuge for different types of wildlife. It's located right along the Fox River. It was actually established back in 1969. So just recently we celebrated the 50th anniversary. We have a nice little nature center with a variety of taxidermy, live animals on display, about 7 miles of hiking trail, most of them right along the river. So it's just a great spot for people to get out and enjoy things without having to get too far from home. You know, it's not a big adventure to head out here. You can really, many people can walk down here from their houses. So it is just a great, great urban area and a great spot to see wildlife of all types.
So what do you do in the center?
So I am the director / naturalist. So I serve a lot of the director roles, working with budget, planning, organizing, overseeing staff. And then we have a very small staff of 3 part-time workers. So I work with them. I also hold many of the naturalist roles yet. So we have been crazy busy lately with summer programs, lots of daycares and kids coming down. So we'll lead field trips. We work with the general public. This week has been a little interesting. We have actually been bringing goats out onto the property the past 2 weeks to help battle invasive species. So we really try to focus on those 3 pillars of education, conservation, and recreation. And I have a little bit of involvement in all of it. I've been here on staff for about 13 years now.
That's amazing. And so how many work there at the center?
We have 4 permanent staff members, myself, and then our 3 part-time.
Right.
And we have currently 3 seasonal employees on staff for the summer as well.
There we are. Wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
And let's make
I love the picture of our site manager.
Okay, I think you're going to get a lot of applications now. This is
yes. Anybody wants to relocate, we are hiring for a part-time site manager.
Yeah, and people tell me they don't have jobs. Look at this one. That's a dream job. That's incredible. That's incredible. Absolutely. So, Debra, let's make the jump now to this incredible page. I mean, obviously, I didn't hear about you until someone fortunately wrote to me and said, "Hey, Christian, look at this. That's something incredible." Because on the 11th of April, they discovered then, of course, that there were some indeed there were some eaglets in the nest. And I think if I calculate correctly, if that's the 11th of April when you first saw that there was activity, which was verified. So you verified on the 24th that there were indeed four. This is incredible. But if I calculate from the 11th of April, it should be about 75 days to today. So that's quite some time. So let's start right in the beginning when you first confirmed this, and tell me how what happened. Obviously, the news was very interested. I think this was the first. This is the press release, I think, on the 27th or so.
Yeah, so maybe just starting a little bit further back,
Yes.
Thousand Islands. So here in Wisconsin, even in most of the continuous United States, back in the early 80s, bald eagles were very few and far between. They were not seen in the Fox Valley area at all. It was kind of unheard of to see an eagle in the area. And one of our claims to fame here at Thousand Islands, as the eagles started making their comeback, we were the location of the very first active bald eagle nest in the Fox Valley area. So we were super excited. We worked with the DNR, we monitored the nest. Biologists would climb the nest and survey the eaglets,
Mm-hmm.
take blood samples, feather samples. So we've really kind of been in the eagle business for quite some time. And then I think we just sort of started taking them for granted. Yep, we've got eagles here. The DNR stopped sampling the nest. We would watch them, but not real closely. And it just so happened that this year we connected with the Madison Audubon. So that's another large city in southern Wisconsin. And they have been doing a nest monitoring program for a number of years. And we decided to expand into the Fox Valley area. So we've been monitoring, I think it's about 23 eagle nests. And as staff, we decided, you know what, we're gonna take it on to monitor this nest. We would watch it, but we never did a formal monitoring, session or survey during the nesting season. So we started this kind of gung ho, all excited, ready to watch the eagles and watch some eaglets. And so yeah, so back in April, we first saw some evidence of brooding or hatching in early April. So we got all excited. The first visual we had of eaglets, we saw 3 eaglets. We were, really excited. Woohoo! Obviously, it's usually between 1 and 3. And it's actually my husband has been doing a volunteer monitor for us as well. And it always happens on his monitoring session. He was out there and taking some video. He brought it into me as I was working in the office, and we uploaded it. And we're like, whoa, there are 4 heads in
Therefore,
that. So we were so excited. We started spreading the news pretty quickly, sharing all that excitement, spreading the video. So we were riding on a pretty good high with those 4 eaglets. Started monitoring more often because obviously we were a little worried that a pair of eagles would be able to support four eaglets. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And
right.
as we continued monitoring, once again on one of my husband's shift, he was out there taking videos of the eaglets. There were 2 adults in the nest, feeding, working on it. And lo and behold, we had a third adult eagle fly up to and into the nest bringing food. And we were able to verify 3 adults in the one nest caring for the 4 eaglets. So every time we turned around, it seemed like there was new excitement to see.
Right, that's excellent. I just, by the way, saw we may have just lost David Hancock. I hope you get it back. Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties, but this is it is a bit challenging to get everyone on board. So I hope this will work. But in the meantime, let's just continue, Deborah. That's absolutely amazing. So whilst you'll maybe you can explain a little bit more about the excitement also with the news, and then I will try and see if I can get David back in the meantime. So sorry about that.
Not a problem. That's life with technology these days, right? We learned
Yeah.
that very easily with the pandemic. So, for anybody joining in, if you're not super familiar with the bald eagle nesting season, very typical for bald eagles to lay 1, 2, or 3 eggs. So the fact that 4 eggs were laid in the nest was pretty remarkable. So we did some studying and we found only a handful of nests that have ever been recorded to have 4 eaglets in that nest. So that is definitely something that we are very excited about. And then when we learned of the additional adult that's actually tending to the nest, it started to make other things make sense a little bit more. Because in our video, it's hard to say, we just have a short video of all 3 in that nest, but we are suspecting that it is 2 female eagles and one male eagle that's tending to that nest and bonded to that nest, which starts making a little bit more sense. So we are thinking that perhaps the 2 females both contributed towards that nest. Maybe each of them laid 2 eggs, so
Hmm.
that totaled up to our 4. They have been growing quickly. If you go onto our website, we do post at least about once a week. We'll post a new video or an update on how they're doing. So they are growing quickly. We are starting to see eagles in the Fox Valley here starting to fledge, but we have not had any fledging come out of our nest yet. One of my staff members went and did a monitoring session just today. And I was really hoping she was going to be able to send me some pictures or something to have some new excitement to share with you. But they are all 4 still in the nest. We've seen a lot of what we call hop flight. So they're spreading those wings, they're flapping their wings, kind of hopping up and catching air a little bit. But we have not seen any branching. So that's going to be that next step towards fledging, is when they start climbing out on the branches of the tree. So we haven't gotten that far yet. So far, they are all 4 just right into that
Yeah,
nest.
that surprised me. I think if I remember correctly, fledging should be somewhere between day 78 and 82 or somewhere around there, right? And I think we are now, if I calculate correctly, if we take the 11th of April, it's somewhere of day 75 already. So I would have expected branching already, so.
Yeah, and our monitoring sessions, we go out for a 1 hour session each week, and we'll have 2 people monitor each week. So, if you think of all the hours in the week, we have eyes on that nest just for 2 hours out of the week. So certainly there could be some branching on going on that we just haven't noticed yet. But from what we've seen, we haven't seen that branching. Here at Thousand Islands, I usually use the 4th of July as kind of a marker for us that typically the eaglets have fledged out of the nest by then. Just kind of looking at the comments here, I see the
Yeah, go
question.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm going to Deborah, if you don't mind just answering some of the questions, I'm
yeah,
going to try in the meantime multitask and get David Hancock maybe on the phone or so. I'll try. Okay, so excuse
yeah,
me for a moment.
not a problem.
I'm just going to
Um,
silence myself. Yeah.
So just looking at the one comment asking if it was a lake or river nearby, we are located right on the Fox River. So that does have a large fish population. We have a fish species called gizzard shad that the eagles feast on quite a bit. So definitely a great food source there for them. Even outside of nesting season, we're a great wintering habitat for eagles, simply because we have open water on the Fox River all throughout the winter time. All right, so keep those questions coming. I'm going to do my best to see. I said 2 adult females. Dr. Sharp has seen 3 adults with 2 females. Each female had its own egg cup in the nest. So we do not know if there are separate egg cups. We are observing from quite a distance. So we're on shore, and the nest is actually located in a tree out on the islands. So we don't.
Came back while I went in.
Oh, David's back. Fabulous. So we don't know if it was 1 egg cup or 2. Unfortunately, we don't have a webcam on this just yet. Not sure if that'll happen in the future, but we're going to.
Okay, we have David back now. That's good. One second. I'm just
I have to.
wait. I just silenced David. I don't know what's going on, but we'll sorry, but this is really funny. It's sorry about the bit chaotic thing, but David will come back in a moment, and then we'll get him into talking a bit. Sorry, Deborah, where were we?
Well, we were just kind of going through some of the comments. We were talking about the river and the fish source. One thing that I'm kind of excited to note, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when we were sampling the eaglets, doing blood samples, We had found that the PCB levels in the eaglets coming out of this nest were higher than any other biologist had seen anywhere around. So if you're not familiar,
Really?
PCB is a chemical that was used in the paper making process. And back then, before regulation, that wastewater was just emptied back into the river. So the Fox River has a history of high PCB concentration. There have been a lot of efforts to clean that up. So PCBs are banned, a lot more regulation on the paper industry. There's been dredging in certain areas of the Fox River and Bay of Green Bay. So that when we did some sampling about 5 years ago, the DNR came and sampled. There was one eaglet in the nest at that time, took blood samples. He saw a 70% improvement in contamination levels in that eagle. So it really is one of those points that drives home that, you know, in the past, there have definitely been mistakes. There have been issues with pollution. There still are issues, but we have really come a long way to clean things up to be able to support all of these eagles in our area.
Oh, that's a fantastic achievement, isn't it?
Mhm.
David,
Yeah,
do you want to
good
jump
for
in?
you. Yeah. Yeah.
David, do you want to maybe give some comments about your experience, especially when it comes to just the numbers, 2, 3, and also 4 eagles?
Well, she's got that right on. It's pretty regular across North America. It's usually 1, 2, 3, and our average number of eggs is really right on 2, and they nearly always both hatch. But boy, out in the wilderness, you know, when I used to do all those flight surveys up and down the whole coast, we were lucky to have more than. In fact, we were lucky to have one average fledge. So there's always quite a large amount of loss, and she, you know, it's right across the country. The big thing is she's got a marvelously productive pair if they produce 4 eggs on their own. That's quite incredible. I've never seen that on the West Coast. I do know there was a Montana pair that for a few years did 4 young, and there's been, I think, 1 or 2 others, but there's always the question, are all these eggs coming from the same lady, or are they coming from more than one lady? I mean, that's happens in lots of wildlife where we get what we call dump nests. And I don't know that there's an actual record of a dump nest, except in California, where they've had the 2 females sitting side by side and each producing 2 eggs. And then they were sitting in the same nest with a single male. I mean, that's another version of things. That's awesome. But I think you've got a true pair, 1 male, 1 female, and it appears she's laid probably 4 eggs. So that's quite awesome.
So, David, that might have been when you lost connection, but I did let people know we have gotten video evidence of 3 adults in the nest all at once. And we are suspecting it is 2 female and 1 male just by that short amount of video. Looks like
okay. I
bigger
didn't
girls
know
and
that. That really clarifies that. Then I mean that you're absolutely right. That then you could not rule that out. In fact, in all likelihood, that's the source of it. I hadn't heard that until you just mentioned it. Thank you for telling. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so that's a kind of interesting. I think the one in Montana, that bird did produce for several years in a row 4 eggs. So I think it's physiologically possible, but pretty unusual. Yeah. So are you going? So this is really interesting. Are you going up to sample? To do any banding or blood sampling of the chicks this year?
So we are not. I've reached out. Our local DNR would be the ones that have the permitting and the process to be able to do that, and they have not responded with an interest to sample that nest. So I don't believe it'll be the birds will be banded at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to ban them, you might as well do a blood sample, and then, of course, you might be able to get DNA. Somebody would like to know whether there's 2 females in the group. So, and it might be even more interesting to know whether the same male had courted both, or maybe she had mated somewhere else, the other female. Yeah. All sorts of variants, isn't it? I mean, nature keeps throwing wonderful options to us.
Absolutely. Every time we see something, it just brings up more questions we wish we had answers to.
Yes.
And, we do have another nest here in the Fox Valley that's been recorded to have 3 adults. This one is 2 males and 1 female. So it just seems, David, have you noticed an increase in thruples, if you will, three eagles tending to one nest?
No, we've not had that here. It's been basically in California, out on the Channel Islands, where they've experienced that on several times, several years. And but to my knowledge, we've not really had that here.
Interesting. So yeah, it's one of those questions is there something, their population numbers are doing really, really well in Wisconsin. Every single county except for Milwaukee County has active nests. So we wonder, are their populations getting to the point that they're starting to share nests now?
Yeah, that's an awesome speculation. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it could be that the territories that males can own, or maybe they're limited now, and so maybe he's housing a couple of ladies to, yeah.
But David, what you did notice is with the urbanization of the eagles is that their nests are getting much more closer together than it used to
Oh,
be, right?
yes, absolutely, and this may be another phenomena of the same general thing. Locally, we've when I used to do all the aerial surveys and up and down the whole coast, eagles used to be in a mile apart, and many parts of the coast there's still that or a bit more on the steep sided inlets where there's no great intertidal zone. It's sometimes 2 miles apart because there's simply not much feeding area. Where you've got lots of shallow waters, you get a lot of feeding area, and you get in our area you get a lot of midshipmen, a little favored food that they all eat, and so lots of intertidal waters enables a higher density. And I've got several places right now where there's 3 nests, each about 280 to 300 meters apart. Now, that's a real conflict for the birds. They don't do nearly as well when they're that close. They spend so darn much time arguing and yelling at each other and defending their territories, and sometimes favored perches are squabbled over who gets that hunting perch. And it turns out that even this year, our one nest in the center of this, which we have a camera on, it's got only one young. In fact, Christian knows this nest well because he did a whole book about it a few years ago. It's the White Rock nest. She's got one young. The nest immediately 300 meters to the north, it failed. And the nest 300 meters to the south, it failed. Both failed this year. And last year, the one to the south and the north both succeeded. Our nest in the middle failed. So, I mean, maybe they're working out how to how to split this very rich area up. It's also not just rich in food; it's rich in There's very few areas with big enough trees. Here, the availability of big trees to support their nests. That's the real limiting factor in our whole Fraser Valley here. There's lots of food. It's where can they hang these big nests? And then, of course, where are their perch trees going to be so that they're not so close to each other that they're spending their whole time bickering and yelling and screaming at each other. And maybe you're getting full there as well. And maybe you've got a lack of trees. I mean, I don't know your area. It seems to me you've still got pretty good forests there.
Maybe we could just quickly jump in and answer Rosemary's question. Can you see that? Can you see it, Deborah?
I've been jotting down some questions, but I
okay, you're good. You're multitasking. Okay, let me read it out. If the adults feel comfortable with the situation, do you think they might continue on this annually? If so, would you put up a camera?
So, I'll certainly let David jump in with some information there. But from our understanding, eagles really will bond to their nesting location, their actual nest, if they are successful. So my understanding is that if all 3 of these eagles working together are successful, as they seem to be, they typically will bond to the nest location, which means they will be back to all 3 of them working together in future years. We have had an active nest on the property since 1988, so it is very realistic to think that we will have some pair, whether it's a traditional pair or a trio on the property. We have looked into webcams in the past, and with all of this excitement are continuing to look into it. There is some logistics that we have to work out because, once again, the nest is on a tree out in the islands in the middle of the river. So
Oh,
logistics to accessing that is an issue. Thankfully, technology has come a long way, but with that technology also comes a big price tag. So those
Yes.
are really
Yes.
our two limiting factors right now. We haven't given up on it, but I have no promise that there will be one there by the next season.
may I jump in with another
Of
question?
course, go
Because
ahead.
you mentioned you had seen two females. Are both females there regularly?
So the video that we have during our observation showed two eagles in the nest. And then while we were taking the video, doing the observation, a third eagle came and flew up into the nest. So all three were there together. Just by sizes, we are going on the estimation that it was two females and one male, two larger eagles. One was a little smaller. But that is the only time we have seen three eagles in the nest at once. So we are definitely coming to some conclusions on our own based on what we've seen. Since then, I personally have not seen even a single eagle on the nest lately because it's pretty full of eaglets. We did have one monitoring session that saw an adult come bring a fish, but we have not seen two or even three eagles in the nest, adults in the nest together since that video.
Okay. Yeah, that's different. The one in California, the trio daily incubated the eggs and daily raised the young. They were very cooperative and got along fine. It was amazing. So this could be what we normally would call a dump nest, where one pair has the nest. Some other female was somehow tolerated. Typically, ducks do this. An extra female duck will come along and she'll drop an egg or two or three or four sometimes in other females' nest. That particular duck may never incubate the eggs. It may be left to the dominant one, but the dominant one ends up with, instead of maybe 8 eggs, maybe 16. And so she's got an awful big brood to try and look after in the end. But that's not what you don't think you've got quite that here. This female, you don't think she came back. I mean, you just don't know. You've had one visitation that you recorded, and that's all. So she could have laid half these eggs, of course, and you didn't know it. On the other hand, well, that would be wonderful if you could get your DNR to do a blood sample, because that would be quite detectable in the eggs,
Right.
in the chicks, in the blood. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
one of the reasons why we kind of came to that conclusion is all three were on there while the eaglets were hatched. So it wasn't, where we saw all three early in the like incubation season. We have seen all three adults throughout the nesting season, just not on that nest. Almost every monitoring session, we would note even early on that there would be three eagles in the area that we would see from our monitoring location, which was a little odd to begin with, but we just thought, well, there's just a bachelor hanging out that this pair is tolerating. But yeah, it would be fabulous to get either some DNA sampling or even, just to have that webcam for future years, because you can just gather so much more information than just watching a nest for an hour or two each week.
Yeah. That's webcams have just changed our whole perception of eagles, being able to watch them 24/7, particularly. I mean, most of us who've spent a lifetime looking up with telescopes or binoculars were so impressed, but we folded up as it started to get dark. We'd fold up our telescope and go home. Once we put the cameras in the nest, and they had, right from the beginning, the cameras all had infrared lights on them. Well, then we found out that, my goodness, just like us, when we go home in the dark, we have another life as well. Well, eagles do too. They get visited by raccoons. They get hit on the head by horned owl. They have mice running over their bodies. They have all sorts of excitement in their evenings that we never even anticipated. Yeah.
Yeah, here's an interesting question from Osprey Mama. By the way, Osprey Mama is an absolute expert with ospreys, and I often have her as a commentator. So very nice to see Osprey Mama here on the broadcast. She says, "Did anyone witness mating from both females?" That's a good question.
We did not visualize copulation with the adults at all this season. We visualized it with our peregrine falcons on the property here, but
Oh, right.
not the
Wow.
adults.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Do you have a pair of peregrines nesting in your area as well?
Yeah, so we have a paper mill pretty much right across the river from us, so they have a nest box on site there.
Wonderful.
That's
Wonderful.
really wonderful, yes.
Yeah.
Next question from Colin. Can the adults move eggs from one nest to another, or do you think they were all laid in the same nest?
I guess maybe that would be more of a David question, but from my understanding, they would all be laid in the same nest unless there's
Yeah,
more
I've never heard of.
behavior, I don't know.
Yes, I've never heard of an eagle. How would it move an egg? I mean, I think that would be just totally impractical. I've never heard of them. I mean, they roll eggs every day, every 3-4 hours. They roll the eggs in the nest to make sure that they're rolling over and over to keep the actual developing embryo from constantly hitting the top of the shell, because the embryo is made largely from the fat, and the fat floats. So they keep rolling their eggs so that the embryonic part that's growing with the next to the ova, the egg source, the fat source, is down lower, so then it slowly floats to the top again. But that's a whole different thing. Moving an egg from one nest to another, I've never even heard of that as an option. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. No, that would be the cuckoo's nest.
Well, that's like a dump nest, but that's not. But we've mentioned that there were possibility of dump nests, and in a sense, that's what this female. Both females are likely putting their eggs simply in the same nest. I don't think that the question meant that, because we already answered that. Yes. Yeah.
I sometimes wonder. I mean, if this is an egg, if this is a nest now where we see 4 eaglets, which is quite rare, is it, as we put up more cameras, is this going to become much more probable to see, just like we saw the question of having hawklets in an eagle's nest, which we saw in 2017, right? And then thereafter there were more events suddenly reported, right? So maybe we'll see suddenly more nests with 4 eaglets. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I think a lot of these events that trigger people's imagination, and then with a lot of cameras around, and then with a lot of ways of people communicating something they've seen now with all the social media, I think we're going to find out about a lot more variability in people's exciting visions of what happens in nature much more commonly. It's just happening. It's a function of our increased communications ability.
Yeah, and Osprey Mama is saying, once they fledge, will you try to continue to observe them in the area as long as they stay with pictures and updates? So is this something you're going to really concentrate on, Debra?
We definitely will. So our official monitoring program ends after they fledge, but considering it's staff that's watching this nest, as much as we're available, we're going to try to keep an eye on those fledglings, those eaglets. We have had occurrences in previous years where we'll find a newly fledged eagle on the ground in a different area of the property, probably tried taking off on a bigger flight than they were really capable of. So we do try to keep an eye out. We will definitely keep people updated as much as we can. Once they are able to start flying, though, it's a lot harder to keep track of them.
Indeed. And we all find that. They disappear from sight, and that's it. And they're gone. Unless you can put trackers on them. We've had, not just did we pioneer the putting in the cameras, but we've now been able to also put some trackers on young. Lots of people have done that. But boy, we've got one of our birds from the very nest that's now in trouble. And that's why I had to leave here momentarily, because our chicks fell out of the nest yesterday, and the nest right close to my house. It's in a reserve. And one chick was landing down on the nest from a branch above, and he knocked the other out, and then he fell out. The one went to a big tree and is okay. And the younger bird just landed below the nest, but about 70 feet above the ground on a branch. And it's not quite ready to fly yet. So it presents a really big challenge. And I expected the other call that I went off to get. It's our head observer. I thought she was calling me to say, David, the bird hit the ground, go get it. Because that's what I expect to be my next call. So these things happen. Yeah. Interestingly enough, you've got this nest on an island, a little more awkward because cameras, they're very simple to install. The key is having electricity nearby. You can run electricity 1,000 feet, but you can't run the power through Ethernet cable. That you'd have to have an independent transmitter. But then once you put your transmitter on, you can send this your signal 5-10 miles very simply. So the key is, do you have power? 120 power accessible to that nest, because then it's pretty simple to put in the camera.
Yeah, unfortunately we don't. Like I said, we have been looking into it. No great announcements or anything to share, but we are hoping to find a way to get a camera on that nest in the future. I just can't give you any, great news just now, but certainly follow for any updates. I know Walt had the question, can we follow your updates somewhere? Absolutely. So 2 great ways to keep up on the Eagles. Follow us on Facebook. So just Thousand Islands Environmental Center is on Facebook. We'll post our updates on there or on our website, thousandislandsenvironmentalcenter.org. Christian had that kind of posted up there before. We have a special page dedicated to our nesting updates, so we'll have nesting updates there. We also have a YouTube channel, so if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, all of our videos are posted on there. So lots of different ways to kind of hear for those updates, and as soon as we have anything to share about a possible webcam, we certainly will get that out as well.
Yeah, just to show you, so the YouTube channel, I'm just going to enlarge that so you can see it. 1 second. Okay, there you go. So this is the Thousand Island Environmental Center. That's the YouTube. And the Facebook page is also called 1000 Islands Environmental Center. And then they have a beautiful web page here that I will just go to the, so that was just the About Us. And then you can see something about the visiting. We already talked about the location and so on. It's a very beautiful website. It's called 1000islandsenvironmentalcenter.org, so you can see that. Just to jump to some more questions, some good questions coming here. Sherry, it's very nice to see you here. I think this is a great question. If this nest has 2 females, how do they sync or synchronize laying eggs so that they all hatch at the same time? That's a really critical question. So I'm going to give it back to our 2 experts here.
Well, I'll jump in on that. And the point is, they don't all hatch at the same time, but they do hatch in normally 3 days apart from when they're laid. So if a second female came in and laid eggs and it wasn't close by, it could be totally a different time sequence. So if she was allowed to come into the nest and lay her eggs 2 weeks after the first bird laid eggs, then that would be very unusual, and I would think highly risky to the late hatching chicks, because by that time, if some chicks had hatched 2 weeks earlier, they're just as likely to pick up a small chick that just hatched and eat it. I mean, that's 2 weeks difference would be just too much for, I think, these eagles to cope with. 3 days is normally 3 days apart, and if you get 3 eggs, the oldest and the youngest are usually about 6 days apart. They can be less, but they can't usually be much more.
And here comes a good question from Kathy. Well, sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, okay. I want to come back. Somebody posed a question a minute ago, said they had their cameras run on solar. Yes, I would like that person to write me and contact me. We want to do that, but we haven't had enough of us and solar expert to advise on that. When we put solar in on one of our important cameras out on the Harrison, it was a total failure in that we got like 18 minutes a day from a huge 6x8 solar panel, because it was just never any sun all year, all winter. So well, I'd like to know somebody who's
that is
conquered
Kit.
the solar problem.
You know who posed this question? That's Kit. Kit Harvey posed the question. So you
Oh,
know
did
him.
she? I didn't see
Yes.
who it was.
Yes, you
Okay.
do.
Oh, well, I certainly know Kit. Yeah, I didn't know it was Kit.
No, I'm just telling you. It's okay. That's fine.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
could ask her. You could. She's
Yeah,
certainly put in
I'll phone
contact
her and
with you.
ask her. I didn't know that their camera was solar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kathy, let me just read out this one, please. I thought birds that do not have brood patches use dump nests. Do birds that have brood patches use dump nests too?
Yeah, ducks have brood patches.
Okay.
And
Okay.
geese and swans. Yeah, they all have brood patches. So, mind you, I guess what the lady is getting at, or the viewer, a brood patch is a certain area of the body, and that area is kind of designed to cover what that species number of eggs is. So if it covers 10 eggs, how does a dump nest get in and another lady insert 4 or 5 more eggs? Well, not well, probably, and not necessarily effectively, and probably at great loss to the number of eggs that are going to hatch. So, I mean, nature works out ways to make things work and not work. And the concept of dump nesting is probably not really a good concept, and certainly isn't regularly favored, I don't think, at all.
And Deborah, maybe we can get back to this subject. Sorry, we had some technical problems when you were talking about a very interesting subject. You were talking about the PCB levels and the toxic levels and how much better it is. Maybe we can get maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, because you seem quite excited, of course, about this. And I think David also has a very good background on it. So if you don't mind just repeating that again, now that we're all here.
Sure, I'll kind of set it up and then David share his insight on it. So here in the Fox River Valley, there is a lot of industry on the river. We are a huge paper making area. So Kaukauna was really built on the paper industry. And so one of the chemicals that was used early on in paper making was PCBs. I apologize, I couldn't tell you what the acronym stands for. Maybe somebody else knows that. It's a really long, complicated chemical name. But the chemical was released out into the river along with wastewater in the paper making process. At that point in time, there was not regulation about how industry needed to clean water before it could be discharged into the river. So the PCB contamination levels were quite high. And through the process of bioaccumulation or biomagnification, the PCBs worked their way up the food chain and had was interrupting me. So it did have a drastic effect on those at the top of the food chain. Humans being one, bald eagles being another one. Even today, if you go fishing along the Fox River, you'll see signs of certain species of fish you are not suggested or not recommended to eat more than once a week or once a month because of potential PCB contamination. We mentioned back in the late 80s, early 90s, when they started sampling these eagles, the DNR, the wildlife biologists, found that the eaglets in the Fox River area here had some of the highest concentration of PCB contamination in their blood than they had seen anywhere else. So it was definitely an issue. It contributed to the decline of the eagle populations. But then we move forward a couple of decades. About 5 to 10 years ago, the DNR once again decided to sample our nest, so they sent a climber up. There was one female in the nest at the time, one female eaglet. They did another blood sample and found a 70% improvement in the PCB levels in the bloodstream. So this is, we think, achieved through achieved through regulation, so not allowing the use of PCBs, making sure that water is cleaned before it's discharged into the river. There have been some dredging efforts along the Fox River and in the Bay of Green Bay So lots of different efforts, I think, work together to get that improvement that we've had.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, that's essential wherever there's contamination. The industries just have to clean the darn mess up. I mean, we didn't know that they were messing up, and we'll assume they didn't know, but now we know. And so it all needs to be cleaned up, and it's good that they're doing it.
Absolutely.
By the way, David, there are a lot of interesting technical comments coming in here now, all about solar-powered nest cams, and also I'll read some of them out.
Oh,
It's
good.
quite a lot here. Friends of the Redding Eagles, whom we know. Hi, David.
Yeah.
We use
Yeah.
both solar panels and lithium battery to power our Eagle Cam in Redding, California. So there's one source, and we have fiber optics installed in the Caltrans after they removed the cone from their nest and installed an Eagle Cam in 2008. So that's that. There seem to be quite a few viewers here that know about solar-powered eagle nests. So it does. Fortunately, it is a success already. So.
Yeah. Well, the question is, what amount of power can you get? And this is known. We're just not a great area for a lot of sunshine, and where we were running them, as you know, out on the Harrison, it hardly ever gets sun in the winter. And we were wanting to look at the wintering eagles, because that's where we get the 15,000 in one day. You know, I mean, it's the world's biggest collection of eagles, and it's kind of an awesome thing. And we had a fuel cell, and it was a case of driving the fuel cell. Worked for a couple of years from methanol, but we got almost nothing in terms of energy from our huge solar panel. But today, that was almost 10 years ago. Today, maybe they're more efficient. And I was wondering if somebody had some suggestions on more efficient solar panels, because I've got another nest that we want to use for a big BBC film. But again, there's no nearby power, and if we could get solar panels to drive it, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, there are quite I can't read the name. I think it's Luann says it is on an island and runs through solar once in a while in winter. It'll go out until the sun comes back. Yeah, that sounds very typical. I mean, yes. David, you know about your trackers, right? The Eagle trackers.
Well, they're running on solar panel, but their solar panel is about 3/4 of an inch wide by 2.5 inches long. It's not a very big solar panel. We had 8 feet by 10 foot on driving the cameras, the two big cameras and the transmitter, of course. And it just gave 18 minutes a day on an average. It was pretty dismal. We had to have a fuel cell.
Kathy here is referring to the DDT level. DDT level caused porous shells that broke on the Channel Islands. Yeah, that we had an interview actually about this. Do the chemicals in the water at this nest affect their eggshells? Deborah, do you know about that?
Yeah, so PCBs and DDTs were both issues here in this area. And once again, I believe the PCBs was affecting that reproductive cycle. Whether they were not laying eggs, the shells would crumble, or even, we had many eggs that just never hatched, that were selected or collected from the nest early on. So I guess I would not have the knowledge to differentiate between what causes were from DDT versus PCBs, but as a combination, it definitely had a detrimental effect.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good answer. I mean, this is quite complex, and unfortunately, it's still.
Can I slightly ask a different question?
Yeah,
Deborah,
go ahead, please.
Do you get the cranes coming through your area as well?
So we have a lot of sandhill cranes in the area. Whooping cranes are in the state, but they're still kind of few and far between, so we don't see them a lot. And I've never seen one on the property here. Sandhill cranes, lots of them though. Yeah,
I thought you did. It's been one of my great ambitions to go down to the Rogue River and watch that big fall migration, because I breed sandhills here on my place and other cranes, and sandhills are another one of these awesome creatures of North America, and I just wondered if you had the. I know you've got them breeding in Wisconsin, but the big migration of the ones flying up into the Arctic, do they come through Wisconsin?
Yes, so we get large populations of sandhills coming through, large populations of swans migrating through.
Yeah.
So we are part of the flyway. We get quite a few stopover visitors throughout migration season.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
Well, excellent. I think I think we'll wrap it up then. So thank you so much, Debra, and also David, for both your really interesting and very vibrant communication and discussions here. And sorry about the technical hiccups, but that gets me going here quite a lot in the background. So I'm sorry that I wasn't always fully paying attention. I was just trying to keep everything going. So I hope it's been a big success anyway, and really wonderful to have you. By the way, Debra, finally, I would just like to give you the opportunity to maybe if you would like to just announce any donations or so to your webpage where people can donate, because I wouldn't know any environmental center that wouldn't be pleased to get donations. I can, no, this is, I will just give you the chance to, to point that out now. So
yeah, absolutely. So I'll just start by thanking you for inviting me to take part in this. It's been great. I loved all the comments and questions. But if anybody wants to learn more about the organization, once again, go to that webpage, thousandislandsenvironmentalcenter.org. We do have a donation button, a number of different places. So there's a donation button right on the top of our Eagle Nest updates, at the bottom of any page you get to. So absolutely, we always welcome donations. We operate on a very small budget, so anything that we do above and beyond getting
right.
out, getting the doors open is very much welcome. And did I just see your access was denied?
Yes, I don't know why. I can't
wonder if
donate.
that's something to do. We'll look into that. Maybe it's because it's outside of the U.S. I'm not sure why your access is denied, but we'll get on top of that and make sure you have the ability to donate if you would like to.
I think we should all have the opportunity to donate if we want to. Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Debra. That has been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate it. I know you were very busy. It took several weeks to make this possible, and we really look forward to the fledging. So please, just let us know when they fledge, and as many requested, we would love to hear the story of how it goes on, and whatever happens with them, and best of luck. And it's really been absolutely wonderful. And thank you, David, again for being here. And thanks. We solved all the technical problems. I'm so happy we did, because I mean, your voice is just our David Attenborough of the Eagles here. So it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Christian, for putting up with it and bringing all this together. You've been a pioneer on all these different things. It doesn't matter what it is. Technically, you've resolved so many things for conservation, and I want to thank you for doing that.
That's my pleasure. And by the way, thank you also to Osprey Mamash, who has been always very good doing administration in the background. I really appreciate it. By the way, I will probably in the next 2 days go and live stream an osprey nest here in our area. I'm in Kelowna. It's getting extremely warm here. So we are hitting the 40-degree mark, which is quite warm. But I want to show you the development of an osprey nest that has a beautiful location. So I'll set up all my equipment outside. And if you have time, tune in. It's going to be quite hot and it's going to be amazing. We'll see how these little chicks are doing. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you for being there. And David and Debra, just stay with us one moment.